Chapter 4, Intentional Torts. We're going to go over defamation. It's probably the most important one. So what is it? Defamation is publication of a defamatory false statement of fact through the fault of the defendant. Now, defamation can be libel or it can be slander. All right, if it helps you think about it like this. Slander is spoken, S. Libel, like library, is written, right, like books. So if that helps, if not, don't worry about it. Let's go through the elements. First, you have to have a publication. A publication means the defamation has to be told or written to a third person, a third party, okay? If I say something false and negative to you, about you, and there's no one else there, it's not defamation, okay? It has to be published, all right? Meaning a third party has to hear it. It has to be defamatory. Defamatory means it has to hurt your reputation. Third, it has to be false, okay? A false statement. And fourth, it has to be something factual, meaning it can't be my opinion. I can't say to you, I think you're dumb, okay? Something like that. That would be an opinion, and therefore it wouldn't be defamatory. So, if we're talking about a public figure, right? So if the person that's being defamed is a celebrity or someone like that, there has to be malice, okay? Meaning, I essentially have to be acting with the intent to hurt that person, right? I want to bring them down. I want to bring shame to them. I want to insult them, whatever it is, okay? If it's a private figure, just like a regular person, all right, then you don't actually have to prove that the person who spoke the defamatory language had malice, right? All you have to do is show that they were negligent, that they didn't do their homework, that they made a statement that they shouldn't have, okay? So, what are the defenses? Well, first of all, the number one defense is truth, okay? A true statement is never defamatory. So, if I say to somebody else, I saw you doing drugs, and if it's true that you were in fact doing drugs, then that's not defamation. Why? Because it's a true statement. Now, it doesn't mean it's nice for me to go out and tell other people about that, but nonetheless, it's not defamation, okay, if it's a true statement. Number two is absolute privilege. Now, an absolute privilege means that in certain circumstances, like testifying at a trial, okay, I cannot be sued for defamation. So even if I'm lying on the stand, right, even if I'm lying on the witness stand, you can't sue me for defamation. Now, why can't you sue me for defamation? Well, as far as public policy is concerned, we want a system that encourages people to cooperate with government hearings. And if everybody that testified at government hearings and trials was subject to a defamation suit, nobody would ever do it. So we don't want that to be the case. So we're going to let you get away with we're going to give you absolute privilege when you're in this situation. Third is conditional privilege. Now, conditional privilege means that in certain circumstances, like in certain relationships where I have the authority to make judgments about you, if I do so, right, if I do so without malice, I get conditional privilege, even if what I said is wrong. So take this example. Let's say I'm the HR director at a company, all right, and you work for me, you work at my company. You're sick of working there, so you go out and try to find another job. So your new job, your new potential place of employment calls me and says, hey Ellie, what do you think of this person? Now, let's say you were a really good employee, okay? Let's say you're a really good employee, but let's say I confused you in my head with somebody else. Maybe you have the same name as somebody else. And I tell this person on the phone, I say, hey, that is a really bad employee, they're always late, they don't take their work seriously. If I say something like that, okay, I'm probably okay for conditional privilege. Now, what this means is you cannot sue me for defamation. Now, look, I said something bad about you, right? And I wasn't even right. But that doesn't matter because in my line of work, right, as HR director, I have the ability and the expectation that I'm going to essentially answer requests for new employment, right? So that's part of my job description. So yeah, I got it wrong, but I wasn't acting with malice. Now, let's flip this for a second. Let's say that you were a really good employee and I didn't want to lose you, okay? So I didn't want you taking a new job. So when they called me and said, hey, what kind of employee is this person? If I lied and said you were a terrible employee because I didn't want you to get that job and I wanted you to stay at my company, then I don't get my conditional privilege anymore. Why? Because I acted with malice. So remember, that's why it's conditional. It's not absolute. Absolute always applies when you're at a government hearing. Conditional applies only if the person, A, is doing something that's essentially within their bounds, right? And B, is acting without malice. So last is retraction, okay? So if I publish something about you, if I state something about you that's defamatory, and I take it down, if I retract it, right? If I say, you know what, I was acting, out of anger and this and that. If I do that, that is a partial defense. Now the reason it's a partial defense is because, so to speak, the cat's already out of the bag. So if I make a statement about you that's not fair, that's not true, that hurts your reputation, I may offer a retraction, right? Maybe I'll post on Facebook later and say, hey, I didn't really mean it, I was acting out of anger. But the reality is there's going to be maybe some people who heard it the first time, heard my initial statement, that did not hear my secondary retraction. So therefore, it's a partial reduction in damages, but it doesn't save me from a defamation suit, all right? So there's a couple pitfalls that people fall into, and it's just important to kind of look at them. First is the publication standard, and we talked about that. That means that there has to be a third party to hear it. So if I say something insulting to you, about you, and there's no one else there, it's not defamation. And remember, this can be written or spoken. Some people get confused about that. We just mentioned it, retraction is a partial defense, okay? So just because you retract something, you're not off the hook. You can still get hit with a defamation suit and lose. What will happen is the damages will most likely be reduced in some capacity. And last, in conditional privilege, malice is important. So if you're acting with malice, right? So if you're acting to try to harm somebody, right? Like in the case where I don't want you getting that job with the other company, then conditional privilege doesn't apply, and you can hit me with a defamation suit. That's it.